All right, let's go to Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast for today's Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Moshe, a lot going on right now. A lot of people looking at this. You just heard from Nick Sirianni not too long ago, and he went all Andy Reid on us. He said, got to put the players in position to succeed. They got to go execute. We got to do a better job. And obviously the offense did not play very well. But is that a positive or a negative when you look at the score and the way the game went? Do you look back and say, look, it's a game that they won. It's a game that was, kind of dominated, and they didn't play well.
I mean, I think that's always a positive when you win a game in which you didn't play your best, right? I mean, there's, of course, like every regular season game, like any game you play, you go back, you rewatch, you see what you can do better because you want to make those corrections going forward so that you don't repeat the things, or you hope to not repeat the things that you don't do well in a game. But yeah, anytime you win when you don't play great and you leave a lot of meat on the bone, then yeah, you're happy about that. But to your point, you got to make sure you're cleaning up what's not right.
You got to make sure you're cleaning up what's not right. What did not go right yesterday? Because that to me is the big question. Like, people looking at Hurts, did he play well? Was it more Kellen Moore? Did you not like the game plan? What needs, in your mind, to be cleaned up from yesterday's game?
That's a tough question. It always comes back to the pass offense, right? But it's come back to the pass offense, multiple times this year. And, I don't know that this week they're going to clean up a year's worth of uncertainty and a year's worth of sort of discombobulation and all of a sudden go out and, light up the scoreboard from a passing standpoint against whoever they play in a divisional round. I would think that I think some of what the Packers did to be effective defensively, Mike, was going out of character a little bit. We talked in the pregame show with Greg Cosell that the Packers are like the Eagles defensively in that they really don't bring a lot of pressure. It's not their game. But you saw when they fell down 10-0, I call it rage blitzing. I think Jeff Hafley got so annoyed, especially on that touchdown to Dotson, with how much time that JalenHurts had to throw, and being 6 for his first 6, I think that he just started throwing not just blitzes, but like cover zeros, like the kitchen sink of blitzes at JalenHurts. And then, oddly enough, that seemed to waken up the Packers' 4-man rush, because even when later on in the game, as he stopped rage blitzing, even the 4-man rush was getting home. But so the point is, they're either going to face the Rams, they're either going to face the Vikings, and I think that they've got to do a better job, per se, or just make sure that they're on their P's and Q's with what kind of unscouted developments or what kind of curveballs both teams have to offer in case they want to throw that at the Eagles when they least expect it. That's kind of a hard thing to prepare for, though, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely, no doubt about it. So what did you think of Jalen Hurts?
I think he held on to the ball quite a bit. I think that there are some other factors that I'm trying to look into. So is Adam this week. Specifically, A.J. Brown, his usage seems very interesting to me. There were only a couple of shots downfield to him. I'm not, he's talked about his knee issue, and I wonder if that's impacting how they use him. Usually when a team blitzes as much as it does, as the Green Bay does, that's an opportunity to pop one-on-ones deeper. So I think that might be a limiting factor. I think the third down offense, if you look at the play calling, was very conservative, but I think that was intentional. I think the Eagles have gotten to the point where they've basically told you, based on their actions, that they believe that with their defense and with their running game and with their offensive line, that they don't feel the need to take risks. So on 3rd and 15, we saw a draw to Saquon Barkley, right? Even though you have great offensive firepower. On another 3rd and 8, you saw a swing pass or a screen pass. You did not see aggression on 3rd and 8 very much like we've seen from this team maybe last year or the year before. So I think the discussion is more about, it's multi-layered. It's not just about what you saw against the Packers, but it's about who the Eagles think they are offensively and what they're doing. So all of that against the Packers manifested in not a very pretty passing game, not a great game for JalenHurts, not a great game for the wide receivers, and overall kind of, I know people feel like there's concern about the pass offense and being left on the bone as they advance deeper into the playoffs.
Well, at least it wasn't A.J. Brown who seemed all that concerned about the pass game. He had a good chuckle after the game. He was hamming it up, talking about his book. And you're right, he had one catch for 10 yards. He wasn't all that involved. It's a game that's 22-10. They win kind of handily, but did you feel they dominated the game?
Defensively, yes. I feel like defensively they dominated the game. I feel like they obviously hit hard. The turnovers are one thing. I would say that the Zach Bond interception, I don't even think Love was under duress. He just made a bad throw. The Darius Slay interception was a really skillful pick. I mean, it was underthrown, but for a corner to run all the way down the field and be able to sort of behind the shoulder catch it the way he did, that was skillful. The Quinyon Mitchell interception, that's just, Jordan's trying to make a play at the game. To me, I just thought that the Eagles came out and set a defensive tone or a hard-hitting tone. They obviously forced the fumble on the opening kickoff, and then they put two Packers receivers out with some pretty hard hits. Nolan Smith put Elgton Jenkins out by getting his helmet into his shoulder blade. I mean, the Eagles were clearly the more physical team, and that was a physical, low-scoring game. So I think you definitely draw the correlation there that's what the Eagles did. They set the tone with the hard hits.
Yeah, so like in looking at the offense, if you're like big picture in it, you watch that game and say, this offense would be concerning moving forward, or was it just the style of the game and the style predicated to them that we don't need to be a dynamic offense this week?
This week. That was your key term. Are you going to convince me or anybody else that the Eagles don't have to have a dynamic offense if they play the Lions in the NFC Championship? Not me, right? You're going to have to score points to beat the Lions. Mm-hmm. Just like I say, you have to score points usually to beat the Eagles. So if the Eagles give a good defensive effort in the game against the Lions, you're hoping the Lions only score 24 instead of 34, which means you still got to score 25 or more, and you'll probably have to throw the ball a little bit better.
Well, how disappointing?
The concern is valid.
On that then, how disappointing was it that they get 4 turnovers in the game and end up with 22 points?
Yeah, very. I mean, there was a span after they went up 10-0 that they punted on 4 of the next 3 straight possessions and 4 of the next 5 possessions. I did not go back through games this year to see how often that happened, but even with the passing game pitfalls, I'm going to guess that hasn't happened very much this year, where the Eagles had to punt 4 out of 5 possessions. And then I think on the one that they didn't punt was just a field goal. So when's the last time the Eagles went 5 possessions and totaled only 3 points off those 5 straight possessions? Probably not very much. And so that's the first sign that once you got into the playoffs and played a team with a really good defense, which the Packers do have, that things are going to be a little bit different. And now you're about to go to the second round, and then hopefully for them the next round and then the next round. And we know the defense aren't getting any easier. So I would say that it's a valid concern.
For Jake Elliott, what's the story? That he made 3 kicks, that they passed on a kick, that he missed an extra point?
I mean, you know it, right? I mean, in years past, now we're talking about Jake Elliott, different kickers, different story. But in years past, Nick Sirianni is not going to hesitate to bring Jake Elliott out to kick a 57-yard field goal late in the game in wonderful conditions and, no weather issues, right? He did it. In this game, he did. He said, nope, we're going to punt. So that just, to me, told you that Nick Sirianni is not 100% confident in Jake Elliott's long-distance kicking.
Geoff Mosher, Football at 4. Let's look at the defense. You can talk about the offense and say, like, their physicality up front. I think their offensive line, they didn't have a great day running the ball, but I think their offensive line was a difference in the game overall. Like, they did what they did because the offensive line, the touchdown pass to Dotson, he's got 7 seconds back there to throw the ball. Conversely, I think their defensive front, the battle of attrition up front, they just beat that team up front. And they were just a clearly more physical team. And I think that was really the difference from their defense. They didn't get a lot of sacks, but, man, I think Love just had no confidence in his offensive line.
I agree with you. You know, there were a lot of penalties with the left guard once I can't pronounce this guy's name. Elgton Jenkins went out. I think that was huge because they were already down one starting lineman from earlier in the year, the rookie, whose name I can't remember, Jordan Moses was it? I forget his name, but Jordan Morgan, right? So they're already down one starting offensive lineman. Then you lose your left guard, who's probably their best or second best offensive lineman. Their right tackle, as you mentioned, struggled against Nolan Smith. And I really think the guy who's amazingly is not getting talked about enough just for the overall disruptions that he caused was Jalen Carter. I know he didn't have any sacks or splash plays, but he was constantly ragdolling linemen in front of him and making runs have to be redirected. And, you know, he was disruptive. So, yeah, this defensive line took it to the Packers' offensive line. I think some of it was also Jordan Love just being bad. He just was bad in the game. And so that helped the Eagles out as well. And I don't know if that's because he banged up his elbow last game. You know, he left some of those deep throws a little short, like the one that Slay picked off. So maybe that was an issue. I don't know, but he just, you know, he wasn't good, and the Eagles didn't help him out any by applying pressure. I do think, though, that after the 10-0 lead, I don't think the offensive line, as we go to the other side, was as dominant as it was in the first quarter. I think something happened there. Interior offensive line struggled with some of the Packers' big guys up front on the four-man rushes. So I was a little concerned about that.
All right, a couple things. Give me your initial thought on how impactful Nakobe Dean's injury is.
Oh, I think it's very impactful. Nakobe Dean has had a breakout year. Zach Baughn's gotten all the headlines, and deservedly so. Zach Baughn's a Pro Bowler, an All-Pro. But Zach Baughan had 150 tackles. Nakobe Dean had 128, right? Nakobe Dean has 3 sacks. Zach Baughan had 3.5, I think. Nakobe Dean has 6 quarterback hits. I think that's more than Baughan. Tackles for a loss. He has the interception at the end of the Jacksonville game. And on top of that, he is the leader of that interior, that defensive front. They say he's the guy who kind of speaks for the front. I know Baughan wears the green dot, but Nakobe Dean is like the heartbeat of the defense. And so you take out production, you take out leadership. Now, they're fortunate that they did a nice job, I think, in signing a guy like Oren Burks this offseason to have that veteran depth and keeping him. Remember, they kept like 6 inside linebackers, and everyone thought that was kind of crazy because Van Sumeren also made the 53, and Devin White made the 53, and Trotter, and then, you know, the 2 starters, and Burks. So it seemed crazy, but it's a good thing they held on to Burks. He had to play in the Super Bowl last year because Dre Greenlaw, everybody remembers him getting hurt when he's just running on the field and tearing the Achilles. So he's a big guy, 6'4", I think 240. I mean, he's a big guy. But he's not as electric. He doesn't get downhill as fast as Nakobe Dean. You know, he's a backup, and Nakobe Dean's a starter for a reason. So there will be some drop-off, I imagine, in what they do defensively.
Yeah, that's a big loss, and you know, obviously Dean, and it might impact them next year too. It might impact his career. I mean, that patella tendon injury, he might never be the same player.
Well, we did an emergency podcast today, Adam and I, and we brought on Aaron Boardman. He used to be an athletic trainer for the Eagles during the Andy Reid days, working under Rick Burkholder, and he went out to Kansas City with them too. And Aaron really gave us a great inside intel on what the patellar tendon recovery is like, what the surgery is like, how that compares to, say, an ACL repair or a meniscus or something else. You know, he basically said, you know, I encourage everybody to go to the platform to get the full explanation on it. But he said you can pretty much guarantee that Nakobe Dean will start on PUP at the start of next year, and then we'll see if he can sort of round into form. It's a grueling recovery and rehab. Now, 20 years ago, it was a lot worse. Now it's a little better, and you see guys coming back from grueling injuries. But I think it's safe to say that, A, you don't expect Nakobe Dean back until halfway through next year, and B, you don't know that when he does come back, that he's just going to rightfully take his place as a starter, and he's going to be the Nakobe Dean that he was this past year.
No doubt, yeah. Thoughts on the better matchup, Minnesota and the Rams? The
Rams. I mean, first of all, they've beaten the Rams already. Beat them pretty handily. beat them in L.A., ran all over them. Now, that being said, if the Rams beat Minnesota, you're going to think differently. You're going to think they're on a hot streak. I think they entered the playoffs 8-2, right? So I'm not counting the season finale. I think they rested their guys. So they've obviously been a good second-half team, and they're very, very well coached. But I think that Minnesota is a team that can score a lot of points in a hurry, and they've got Brian Flores who will blitz, and he'll play zone behind his blitzes, and we know that JalenHurts has struggled this year both when the blitzing is correct, when they blitz to keep him in the pocket, not necessarily to get way up north, and the Vikings are good disciplined pass rushers. And their zone and their back end defense has been very good this year. They won 15 games, or 14 games, right?
Yeah, Minnesota 14-3. Yep.
Or whatever. Yeah. So they were really good. So that neither team would be easy, but I think Minnesota is the tougher team, and I think they'll win tonight.
Yeah, we'll see. Of course, that game's tonight, 8:00 on 97.3 ESPN. Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Geoff Mosher, everybody. And, of course, we'll have the matchup tomorrow. We'll know who that is, and we'll preview that with Adam Kaplan for tomorrow's Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash. All right, Moshe, I'll talk to you soon, bud.
All right, Mike, take care.